Welcome into the Official Jets podcast.
Dangling a steak in front of a lion and you ain't got no cage in between you. He gonna get to that steak.
So let's go inside the matchup.
A motivated Aaron Rodgers is a dangerous Aaron Rodgers.
Game day and every day, score a jewelry touchdown with Kendra Scott. Shop fashion and fine jewelry fit for another winning season at your local store or at kendrascott.com. Shine bright, do good with Kendra Scott. Mark, it's been a little while. How are you and the family doing in Southern California?
Buddy, we're doing great. No complaints here. Just finished our season with Fox calling games. So this is the off season and what my wife likes to call Perry season. So it's really about her and Daniel and catching up with my good buddies in New York. So thanks for having me.
Always. Listen, how much did you enjoy being in the booth at Fox this year? And can you tell us about all the games that you took in from a 30,000-foot view as far as where's the NFL trending right now?
Oof. Listen, I love what I get to do. I'm so grateful for Fox keeping me around, and this is the total dream job, and there's only so many there's less broadcasters for games than there are quarterbacks in the NFL. So I got to be one of 32 for a little while, and then now we're one of 18 or whatever it is. So I'm incredibly blessed and grateful to Fox. But this is, I'd like to say, the healthiest I've felt. You don't get hit in the booth, which is nice. An occasional ribbing from your partner, whether it was Kevin Kugler or Adam Amin or Chris Myers, when they want to talk and I need to be quiet. So I'll handle that. It's much better than getting sacked by Dwight Freeney or somebody like that. So that's nice. And, I'd like to think 4 years now, we're undefeated, baby. We ain't lost a game in the booth. So I'm feeling pretty good.
We've talked about it before, but you see the game in a different lens. How do you go about providing color to not only somebody who played maybe amateur football or they play college football, but also connecting to the lady on the couch who doesn't have any football experience?
I really do try and go back to some of my favorite coaches' sayings, some of the coach speak, and those funny little things that have just found a way to ingrain themselves in my brain. Whether it's the way you groom a quarterback is like raising a child. So immediately you have a broad audience. Anybody watching that has a child can relate to what you're about to say. And a lot of times you tell that child, hey, buddy, I don't think you should touch that stove. It's hot and you're going to burn yourselves. But what happens? They go out and do it themselves. And quarterbacks are the same way. They go out and try and force a ball when you tell them not to. You tell them who the best player on the other team is. And, hey, we're going to try and avoid that guy for this game until we get to this situation. And, your quarterback gets a little antsy, maybe somebody like me, and you throw the interception. You touch the hot stove. So the best I can relate it to people, the everyday person who happened to be watching. And then at times when there's, a great opportunity to really dive into the X's and O's, then I'll do that. But you can't do it all the time. You got to pick your spots, and that little yellow crayon that we get and all those cool graphics we get to use on the Telestrator from Fingerworks. They give us a lot of options, but it's about when to use them, how to use them, how much to use them. And that's the tightrope that I'm walking during games. But I think it's important on air to try and give your perspective. I'm obviously going to give a quarterback perspective. I don't want to be a quarterback apologist, but I also understand what goes into that position. So if anything, my favorite thing is I'll never look at Twitter like during games, after games, whatever, talking about announcing. But my brother Brandon, who he'll always text me occasionally, like during the week or something, and we'll have Minnesota at Seattle, let's say. And he'll see them at Mark_Sanchez. Oh, you're such a homer for the Seahawks. It's because Geno. Oh, that's so messed up, And then he'll see another one. I can't believe you love the Vikings this much. It's because of Kevin O'Connell. And so I know if I get heat on both sides, I'm probably right down the middle, probably right in the fairway where I need to be. So that's kind of my gauge, just unofficially and fun between my brother and I, who's constantly critiquing me as well. But it's fun. I have a great view of the whole thing, and I have pretty good experience on how this whole operation should look like and how it's supposed to work and stuff, at least from my experience. And so I try and impart that knowledge, try and be self-deprecating, try and teach somebody something, hopefully make somebody laugh, and teach them a little football.
Who would have thought back in your playing days that you and Tom Brady would be teammates here in 2024, 2025? You can't make it up.
Right. It's so funny. We were both actually the same place for New Year's, and he had a Saints game coming up. And so he hadn't had the Saints since like week 2. And this is his first season calling games. And what an improvement he's made. I think, he's my teammate, so I'm always going to speak highly of him. But, he's working hard at it. And it's not an easy thing to do. And it's not an easy thing to welcome a guy who kind of owned your division, not kind of, but owned our division in the AFC East for a long time. And, those were some heated battles against that squad. So you got to kind of check your baggage and help your teammate. But I knew what he was going through, and not seeing a team for 9, 10, 11 weeks, and you have them early in the season, and now you got them the last game of the season, they're trying to get in the playoffs, whatever. That's really hard to catch up on all that film, all that tape. So you got to, kind of get through some stuff quickly and read through some of those games, watch the tape, and you're blinking through tape till your eyes are almost bleeding. So it was just great to catch up with him and, talk a little Saints, because I literally just came off a Saints game and I was like, dude, they got this guy in. This guy's been on IR since your game. Boom. And so it was nice to communicate like that. And I'm glad Fox gives us that, team and family mentality and atmosphere where we can really help each other out. And, whether it's Vilma, Greg Olson, those guys, you contact those guys and just hit them up. Hey, man, you had the Falcons game last week, buddy. What's the deal? Give me, a couple one-liners on this specific player. He just bursts on the scene. What's your take? What did you see? And what did you see at practice? How did that interview go? We don't get to interview him this week. How was he? That kind of stuff. It really matters. And I think it comes across in the broadcast. The more information you have, it always helps.
All right, we got a lot of Jets to get to, but when you and Brady are together in that kind of situation, and maybe you're having a soft drink, do you ever talk about the memories of going at it? That rivalry, Jets Patriots.
No, we actually didn't get into that. We were talking more broadcasting and more about different teams we've seen, and it's interesting when you get to see this many teams week in and week out, and you see certain teams on a Friday practice, and they set themselves apart, right? They separate themselves by, 1, the talent on the roster, 2, the coaching staff they have, and the overall atmosphere that you feel when you walk in somebody's building. So I relate it to, if you've ever gone to like a dog breeder and you got to look at all these puppies and there's 15 of them in this litter. Well, one of them's going to be the dominant puppy. One of them's going to be really aggressive. One of them's going to be a little more reserved. One of them's going to be, whining more than the others. One of them's going to be barking more than the other. So you just get to see them all together and you get to compare them in the same environment. So you really see what separates a lot of these teams. I mean, it'll be no surprise to you, but the Kansas City practice I went to on a Friday, it was before Christmas, not this season, but the year before. I don't think the ball hit the ground until maybe like the second to last play of team, like the team reps. And this is later in the year, so you're starting to cut down on reps, but they were still pretty heavy compared to some other teams. A lot of teams are walking through on Friday. Everybody's schedule is a little different. But it was almost as if, and not almost, the team knew that this practice was an elite level practice, and this was up to their standard. And when the ball hit the ground in the back corner of the end zone, like right off the guy's fingertips, everybody, even me, go, oh, like as if we were rooting for the team in that practice because it was so good. And that's the kind of standard that Andy Reid and that entire coaching staff and the players that they've acquired, the GM, I mean, that's the standard that they adhere to. And there are no substitutes for anything less. So you can see it across the league with these teams, and I'm pretty lucky to get to see that.
You're the last guy who took a playoff snap for this franchise on a cold, wintry day in Pittsburgh.
God, we had them too.
But you came here. You came here to training camp prior to the 2024-25 season. You watch Rodgers out there on that field. When you see the Jets finish 5-12, finish with an interim head coach with Jeff Ulbrich, an interim GM, and Phil Savage, do you wonder how this all unfolded? How are we sitting here right now?
It's so hard to put your finger on one specific thing, but I will say, and I know that this isn't because it's the Jets. This is any team that's 5-12. This is, look at the Commanders last year compared to this year. Look at Dan Campbell and the Lions a few years back as opposed to these past 2 years. Like, it takes time. This whole thing isn't instant grits. And I know everybody wants that. Just give me the answers now, plug and play. We got Aaron Rodgers. We're winning the Super Bowl. Sure, that sounds good. It doesn't always equate to that, right? The theory versus the practice idea. And so it's hard to put your finger on it, but I'm telling you, 5-12 is, we're talking a couple of plays throughout the season, a game, a bounce, an injury, that you go from 5-12 to 12-5. And I know it sounds crazy. I promise you, I know it sounds crazy. And, you're saying that because it's the Jets podcast. I'd say it on any team's podcast. 31 other teams, I'd say it. And it really is. Kansas City was struggling for years until Andy Reid came in. So what's the difference? And I think it's tough when you go through, one, the injuries. Nobody can control that. Everybody tries to do their best to mitigate those things, and hopefully you get hit. If you do early in the season and guys come back, they're not season enders, and you get everybody healthy and you kind of crescendo into the playoffs with your playing ability and availability. But these are difficult things. You get decimated by injuries. You fire the coach after week 5, and the 2 games prior, it's a 1-score game. I don't know a team, and maybe there has been, but I don't know a team that's made the playoffs after firing their coach after 5 games or midway through the year when you have an interim head coach. And that has nothing to do with Coach Ulbrich, nothing to do with Robert Saleh. That defense has been excellent for the last few years. So it's really hard to put your finger on it. And I'm just telling you, the margin is they're not that far off. I know it seems at times you read stuff that fans say, and, oh man, there's not a tent big enough for the circus, and this is a dumpster fire. And, well, hold on now, pump the brakes. Let's eliminate some of the emotion here and get to some facts. And you got a quarterback that played all right, better than all right. He played better than his last year in Green Bay coming off of an Achilles injury. So say what you want about the guy, but he had you in some ball games, and, you got to figure out how to help the guy playing quarterback, whether it's me, whether it's Aaron, whether it's anybody in between. So I think there's a lot of work that needs to be done.
No doubt about that. And the Jets GM and head coaching search is well underway. We're going to hear about a number of candidates here in the coming days and weeks. But from your perspective, as a guy who played quarterback in the AFC Championship game consecutive years for this franchise, what's most important when you're talking about GM, head coach, quarterback?
Well, I think those 3 are the holy trinity of the NFL. And it's an owner that can find those guys, and they all have to be essentially in lockstep or close enough to where they understand when they disagree, it's okay, but we're going to continue rowing the boat in the same direction. And at least hopefully have a similar lens to where they view things, or if they have different lenses, then lenses that they can respect and stuff that they can glean from each other to work together. The perfect example is what they have going in Kansas City, right? You draft your quarterback that you want. He gets to learn from an all-pro in Alex Smith, and then lights the world on fire because he's got a head coach and a GM that believed in him, found him in the draft, and put a ton of resources into making sure that guy's life and his learning curve was the right speed. And, they've done it. And they're the anomaly, they're the outlier, but that's what everybody's searching for, whether it's, we mentioned those conversations with Tom Brady, and we talked about different organizations. And even if him and Bill Belichick didn't agree at times, they still knew which direction they were going. You don't always have to agree. It doesn't always have to be perfect. Bill Belichick's way isn't the only way to win games, right? There's other coaches who've had sustained success. Pete Carroll has a different, mode of operating than Bill Belichick. So does Andy Reid. So there's different ways to attack this thing, but you got to get people to buy in, and it's got to be, one direction, everybody rowing in the same direction. And it's really, really hard to get that. I think when we're talking specifically with the New York Jets, because this place is so big, because the media is such a force in the New York area and nationally, I think it would help to have a coach that might not be their first time. Hopefully it's maybe their second or third rodeo, if that makes sense, with head coaching experience. Hopefully some sustained success, maybe not, incredible success for a long period of time, because a lot of times those people aren't available or they've aged themselves out. So who's out there with that experience? I mean, I understand the argument for and against Rex Ryan. I completely get it. And as one of his former players, listen, we love playing for him. Rex was an excellent coach. He did an excellent job for us. And you can't argue with the success we had. Now, do I think everything was perfect? No. But I wasn't perfect. Rex wasn't perfect. Mike Tannenbaum wasn't perfect. So where can those things have gotten cleaned up? How much has he learned from being away from the game these few years, being in Buffalo for the couple of years he was there? I mean, that's a big factor. And then having, a GM and coach that are, understand exactly what it looks like. What are we trying to find here? What kind of players are we looking for? What's our mentality? Look at the Chargers. I mean, Jim Harbaugh took this team to the playoffs this year. And I mean, you look at their roster, I don't think the Jets have a worse roster than the Chargers. If anything, I'd say the other way around. But these guys somehow found their way in the playoffs. So what's the difference?
That's why the season. That's why the season's been so maddening. This past season was so maddening for the fans, because you talk about the talented roster, and you mentioned before, as far as how close it can be sometimes. The Jets were 3-7 in one-score games, and they had 6 leads in the fourth quarter where the other team ended up winning.
I mean, so those kind of examples. Look at O'Connell's first year in Minnesota. They won like 12 one-score games. So sometimes you get a bounce a couple of those games. Sometimes you're just so in tune with those end-of-game mechanics and end-of-game situations that you're going to out-execute other teams. And really, you just don't give it away. Most teams lose games. Most teams don't go win them. A lot of teams are giving away. If you got the lead in the fourth quarter, you got to be thinking, all right, boys, let's put a bow on this thing and knock these guys out. Let's go. Finish this game. We got to learn how to finish. And it takes time to instill that in a team, in a ball club. And it takes off-season reps. It takes, live reps where you get to go in the situation, either succeed or fail, come back the very next day, watch it as a team. You got to understand exactly what made it work or exactly what made you fail, or what you did to give the game away, and what you allow, because you're either coaching it or you're allowing it to happen, right? And that's the big argument when you look at this ball club with all those fourth quarter leads. Just find a way to finish. I think a lot of that too is special teams. It's not just the quarterback, it's not just the receiver, the O-line, the D-line. It's a collective unit, and those 3 phases: offense, defense, and a lot of times, more importantly, special teams. Just ask Jay Feely, Nick Folk. Those guys hit some clutch field goals for us, for the teams I was on.
Man, folks out there nailing field goals still to this day.
That's what I'm saying. So, that wasn't just, hey, Sanchez won the game. No, we won the game. I made a couple plays. Revis made some plays. Mangold made the block. He had the strain that kept me in the pocket 1 extra half second to find Braylon Edwards down the field. Santonio Holmes streaking across the middle. Those kind of things happen when everybody starts to come together, when it really starts to gel. And the kicking issue, you go through 4 kickers in 1 year, and
play with 5.
You start with Zerline. Sorry, 5. There you go. I mean, you start with Zerline, and he was nails last year, and then goes through his struggles. Then you bring over couple different players. You get Carlson, the brother of the kid in Vegas. The kid in Vegas is an absolute stud. Carlson gets drafted to Green Bay last year in the 6th round. Remember, Green Bay, the youngest roster in the league still, but last year went to Dallas on the road, waxed them. Then they go to San Francisco, who ends up in the Super Bowl, had the Chiefs on the ropes. They have them on the ropes. I mean, they got their foot on their throat, ready to end this game in San Francisco. And Carlson misses the kick, gets cut, boom. Now he's on the Jets, has a rough year. I mean, those games, those 3 points, when you know you got a kicker like that, it completely changes your offensive mentality. You know, as soon as we cross the 40, boys, we got points. Now, it's got to be good. It's got to be really good, or we don't need to force anything downfield. 2 hands on the ball, play it smart, play it conservative. Our defense has got our back. Special teams is going to win us field position, and they're going to get us points. Like those kind of things. Like special teams got to be a weapon. And, you know, we were pretty fortunate to have not just the coaches, like our guy Westhoff, even though he talked a bunch of smack about me. And who else? Benny Kotwika. Kotwika was the man. I mean, getting guys to buy in, finding the Brad Smiths, and, you know, using special teams as a weapon, whether it was Feely or Folk. That's a big part of this whole operation. And that group, I mean, they're not just special team, they're special forces, man. They got to go in and do the dirty work. They got to do stuff that other people don't want to sign up to do, and they got to do it with a smile and a toughness and an attitude. And that's, you know, what I think the team was missing a ton last year, because it's not just offense and defense. Those guys got to win some games for you.
The Official Jets podcast is presented by Kendra Scott, the jewelry company that's shining bright and doing good. Shop game day ready jewelry styles and so much more at kendrascott.com.
How do you go about, whomever this new leadership is, how do you go about instilling a new culture? Because there's a lot of talent here. We've mentioned that. And you have young guys who are dogs. Garrett Wilson, Breece Hall. Yeah. You got an offensive line that's got foundational pieces. You can flip it to the other side of the ball and say you got a Quinnen Williams, you got a Quincy Williams. You know, Jamie Sherwood, his contract's up. We'll have to see what happens. But you got Sauce Gardner in the defensive backfield. There are pieces here. But how do you go about coming in and instilling a winning culture? Because some of these young guys that I just mentioned, they haven't experienced winning yet.
Right. And they haven't experienced it since college, probably. And some of them are not even in college. But like you look at Sauce, you look at Garrett Wilson. I mean, these guys they got to decide on their 5th-year option because they're entering their 4th year. Breece Hall, a little different because he was a 2nd rounder. But those first-round guys, you need to make some decisions on them. And that kind of affects their mentality entering the year. Does this team really want me, or am I on a 1-year prove-it deal? And there's something to be said for both of that, right? For each side of that, keeping guys hungry, but also making them feel a part of the team. And that is a tightrope walk across Niagara Falls. That's hard to do. So no matter what, the person coming in has to command the respect of this ball club. And guys have to want to be there. Then once you get that, you get guys there in the offseason, get guys around each other. You got to have some sort of success. You got to, once again, it's like raising kids. You got to set them up for success, watch them go through something, have the success. Then they come back to you for more. Hey, you told me this. I went out and did it. It worked. I got the catch. I made the throw. I made the block. I used your technique and made the tackle. You know, I tackled through the football, got the strip sack. We got the ball, kicked the game-winning field goal. That was awesome. Coach, give me more. I need more. And so I think a little bit of success early helps. I'm not saying you got to start 10-0.
Yeah.
But there's got to be these little wins along the way, whether it's the actual game-winning or incremental improvement, to where guys want more information, want more knowledge, want to be coached and coach hard. It's easier said than done. It's really easy on a podcast like this to talk about, yeah, man, we're going to establish the culture and they're going to respect it and we're going to win games. Well, yeah, that all sounds good, but what does that look like? And it's somebody with the real plan, with the blueprint, who's, in my opinion, done it before, had that success, something that these players can look back on and say, man, I remember playing against that guy, or man, that position group, when he coached that group, whew, they were tough. They were always tough. They always led the league in this. You know what I mean? Like, You get a basketball coach that comes over and you watch their old tape. Man, these guys are on the ground for every loose ball. These guys use four of their 5 fouls every game. This is a tough unit. So that's what Harbaugh brought to the Chargers, right? And you could see it every place he's been. He has that blueprint. So whoever you're bringing in, they're going to bring in their personality. And then they got to get the guys to buy in, have a little success early so they keep coming back for more. Then now you're not only fighting, the adversity of losing for so long, then you got to fight the adversity of winning, right? The sometimes that's harder than, once you have the success, there's adversity to success in a weird way, right? Now everybody's the reason for the wins instead of that collective group that got you there. Now everybody wants theirs and everybody wants to get paid, which I respect. But, how long can you harness that pure love for each other, for the game, for the practice, for the film, for the weightlifting, for the running and conditioning, the stuff you don't see on Sundays? Like, how much do you love that? And how many of those guys on that roster are you going to fill spots with that love that? So I think that's the crossroads that the Jets are at.
Fair enough. Jets Nation will sign up for those kind of problems. Winning problems. And there are dudes on both sides of the ball. I didn't even mention Jermaine Johnson coming back from Achilles. I talked to him the other day. He's chomping at the bit. Will McDonald broke out in his second year. But let's talk about the quarterback. Aaron Rodgers statistically had one of the best seasons in franchise history. He started all 17 games. You got to give him a ton of credit. At 41 years old, coming back from an Achilles, battling through ankle, knee, hamstring ailments to start every game. With that being said, you're going to have new football leadership here. Aaron has to decide what he wants to do. The Jets have to decide what they want to do. From your perspective, what are your thoughts what Aaron's going to go through, and what are your thoughts what the Jets have to go through? Because not only right now do they have Rodgers under contract, Tyrod Taylor, you also drafted a young kid out of Florida State who's working to get his get back, and that's Jordan Travis. And then people look at the draft and say, hey, the Jets are probably going to be looking at another young passer. We'll have to see how that all unfolds.
So I think when you talk about the quarterback position, there's, there's a production aspect. There is the contract aspect and the financial aspect. And then there's the atmosphere and leadership aspect. So if we're talking straight up production and stats, 39, almost 3,900 yards, 28 touchdowns, 11 interceptions, 63% completions. This is better than his last year in Green Bay. It's not his, back-to-back MVP years or his 2 MVP years, whatever they were. But you can win with that. There's definitely some winning football in there somewhere because those stats are better than half the league at 41 years old, coming off an Achilles. So I don't know. Whoever comes in has to decide on if that's enough for them and what that means. But that's going to play into the next point, which is the financials.
Yeah.
And it's a big number. It's a big number for a guy who's 41. But if you like that production and you're willing to pay him that much, well, don't forget, he set his terms. The team agreed to those terms. And that's what you get. When you make an agreement like that, that's what happens. So you take the good with the bad. Nobody expected him to be out after a couple plays the very first year he starts. And who knows what the narrative is if he plays that whole season. So there's stuff to figure out with that contract. Do you take, the dead cap hit with the money and get rid of him? Do you use him as your bridge guy and draft his successor? Do you keep the current roster and then wait for the next draft class where they think there might be some better quarterbacks available than this draft class, right? Because you missed last year's. There were quite a few good ones, it looked like. So what does that mean financially? And I'm not a cap specialist. That's not my, I don't dive too hard into the financials. I just know it's a little messy with that situation. So they're going to have a plan for that. And then the next thing is just the atmosphere, his leadership. Do the guys respond to him? And I think for the most part, it's yes. I know, recently, and it's an easy place to become the villain, unfortunately. And, he's been villainized in a way. There's certain things I think each side probably could have handled a little differently. Anytime you look at, you go back and look in hindsight, and it's always 2020, but you'd say, yeah, maybe the organization could have done this, and maybe Aaron could have showed up to the mini camps. Maybe he could have been there for more OTAs. Maybe he had his own rehab stuff. Maybe there's other circumstances that I don't even know about. So, it's pure speculation here, but you'd like to have an environment where your guy wants to be there all the time. And there could be reasons he didn't want to be there. I don't know. I'm not saying he's a horrible person for doing that. Whatever. Just I'd like to see moving forward a coach, a GM, and a quarterback, that all three of those guys, that holy trinity of an NFL ball club, are all on the same page. They all want to be together as much as they can, off season, during the season, whatever it is. Whatever our max hours is, we're trying to steal every second of those hours we're allowed to be together. And, this year think about it. You get a new coach, you get 2 mini camps. One of them's mandatory. I'd like my quarterback to be at both. That's just me. If I'm the new coach, I'd love him to be there. It makes my life a little easier, because if you're trying to set this culture that we talked about, well, he's got to be the number one culture guy. He's got to exude all of your fundamentals and your ideals in establishing that culture, or else it kind of falls on deaf ears. Because if you're telling 53 on the roster, hey, you got to do this, but this guy can do that. Now, listen, there is an argument for, I'm going to treat you, if I'm the head coach, I'm going to treat you fairly. You're not all going to get treated equally. You know what I mean? The old Revis rule. The bus leaves at 2:30 unless you're Darrelle Revis. Well, wait. You know what I mean? So there's something to be said for that, but you also have to have the right culture and guys that understand that, and guys that don't take advantage of that. So bottom line is, you need your best players to be your hardest workers. And if that's the case moving forward, I think there's plenty of meat on the bone when it comes to Aaron Rodgers and his ability as a player. I think the contract issue and then the atmosphere leadership issues are things they need to hash out. The new coach, Aaron. But, if you're talking playing ability, the guy's still got plenty. He's still one of the most amazing passers in the league. So I think there's plenty of wins left with number 8.
It's all very interesting because he was here throughout OTAs. That was the voluntary portion of camp. Obviously, you're referring to that mandatory mini camp there prior to training camp. And then you mentioned the Revis rule. You can go back to Bill Parcells, who said that, I think, about treating players fairly. That doesn't mean you treat them equally. Did Revis really have separate bus rules? I didn't even know that.
No, Rex just made that joke one time. He said, the bus leaves at 2:30, talking about we're going to the airport for a road game. And he said the bus leaves at 2:30 unless you're Darrelle Revis, meaning, we'll wait for Darrelle. And then we broke down that, Jets on 3, 1, 2, 3 Jets. And then as we're walking away, it's like, if you have to think about if we'll wait for you, we ain't waiting. That means you're not that good. So it was just, but that's one of those things you get to because we had so many veterans,
the culture was in place.
Yeah, like we had guys that could take that kind of sarcasm, that could understand that kind of humor. The Mangolds, the Brandon Moores, our entire offense, like Alan Faneca, those guys were true pros and had been around a lot. They'd seen a lot. They've seen winning football. They've seen losing football. So they can understand that. Now you got a whole new group of team and rookies, and you ain't making that joke. It's just not, you got to read the room. You can't do that. But with our team, other than me, we had veterans everywhere. So it was a fun time and a different atmosphere.
Getting back to the head coach search, you talked about maybe having a preference as somebody who had experience in that role before. Can you just speak to somebody who played here, as someone who played here, who's in the media now, how unique this situation is, whomever comes in to One Jets Drive? What is it like to be a part of this franchise in New York and with this starving fan base? Because, man, when you came in, you were a kid and you experienced winning right away.
No doubt. And I think I was, baptized by fire in a way. You got to remember my journey. I'm coming off a Rose Bowl MVP. I'm the 5th pick in the draft. The first season was pretty rocky. We backed into the playoffs. We were 9-7. we win our first 3, we lose like 4 straight, then it's kind of up and down. Not sure if we're going to make the playoffs. At one point, I think after the Atlanta game, we thought we were out. Then we come in the building the next day and we're still alive. We got to win and get in. We got to win 2 games and get in, whatever it is. And so that moment kind of galvanized that team to become something special and make some noise in the playoffs. Now, we didn't end up getting to the Super Bowl, but we were damn close. And after that, there was a hunger and there was that culture that we talked about where once we got in that playoff mode, guys just got closer. It's not that their home lives and personal lives didn't matter, but they knew for the next couple months, it's got to be a hyper focus and a singular focus on what we're trying to do. And that is really takes precedent right now. And, not to diminish and minimize anything else going on at home, but there was a collective shared struggle there that was really paramount in our lives, it felt like. And we grew closer. We were always at dinner together. We were always watching extra tape together. We were always getting reps after practice together because we wanted to win. We tasted something. We knew there was something out there, and we got to go get it, man. And it's going to take everything I got, and I'm going to make sure that other guy's giving everything he's got. And if we're not, we need to have a conversation because it ain't fair to everybody. So I just felt like to get to that, we experience it. Then I go to year 2. And now it feels like we're lighting the world on fire. We're winning these fourth quarter games that we didn't win my rookie year. We're winning fourth quarter 2-minute comeback games. And this offense is starting to evolve. I'm getting to throw the ball a little bit more. It's not just run. Okay, occasional rollout pass. Now we're throwing it a little bit. We're getting in empty sets. We're using motion. We're using shifts. This thing's getting to where we want to go. And so I got this taste of the NFL like, oh man, not that it was easy, but this is how it's supposed to go. This is kind of how, you script it. Like we're knocking on the door of the Super Bowl these first 2 years. Third year, come on, we got it. This is the one. And then we go 8-8, miss the playoffs, and it's like, whoa. And then you really experience New York. And I had only seen one side of it. I'd seen little glimpses of, oh, we lost the game, or we're on a 3-game losing streak or whatever, but then we get back on a heater. I didn't experience it like that, where the whole offseason was just, man, you blew it. You're no good, whatever. That's the way it is there. It's feast or famine. It's superlative media. And so having a coach that's been through it before, I think is important to handle that because you need somebody to just steady the boat, right? Like steady, stabilize, and get everybody once again to get the blinders on, put your phone down. The narratives in this building are more important than anywhere else. Let's lock that, knock that stuff out, lock into what we got. And that's one of the most difficult things to do. Just so you know, on this media side, for people watching, there's when you put together a TV show, when you construct a show, there's your first thing out of the gate is called your A block. Cowboys, Jets, they're going to lead the A block on almost every show across the country. Now that you know it, like you'll see it more. I didn't realize it like that until I really got into TV. But that A block is the heavy hitters. And oh, by the way, we'll talk about Kansas City. They're back-to-back Super Bowl champs. But did you see the Jets game yesterday? It's like, whoa, wait, what? How does that work like that? So just for the coaches to understand that and have been through that kind of fire, I'm not saying necessarily in New York, but being the head man, I mean, you're catching strays, you're catching a lot at all times, and that guy's got to be stronger than Kevlar. So it's a different animal in that market, and I'm blessed to have played there, learned a ton about people, business, football, myself, and that's really what that market's all about. So you got to find a way to block it out, and winning is one way to do it.
I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you about the playoffs here. What Kansas City's attempting to do, we've never seen it before, even though that New England had a dynastic run themselves, but you're talking about a team going for 3 straight titles. In terms of the Jets, how should their fan base be viewing the playoffs? Because I'm looking at Kansas City and saying that team's not going anywhere. you're looking at Baltimore and saying that team's not going anywhere. And Buffalo's won 5 consecutive AFC East titles. And those are the teams that you're ultimately going to want to compete with.
Yeah, 100%. But just remember, however many years ago it was in 09 and 10, it was the Patriots, it was us, it was the Steelers. I mean, these things change over time. Now, a lot of these teams sustain success. They get in the playoff tournament every year. That's really where you want to be, right around there, and keep drafting and developing guys. But, the thing can flip fast. So it's not, the end of the world. And you got to build and construct a team to win your division. And then you got to look at, okay, what else do we have? We're going to need some pass rushers because the AFC quarterbacks are insane. Just Mahomes, Lamar Jackson, and Josh Allen. I mean, those three right there. We need somebody to sack that guy. We need somebody. You can't ever stop them. Those guys are, superstars like in the NBA. You're never going to stop Steph Curry. You're never going to hold him to 0 points. But can we just limit his touches? Can we find a way to somehow hold him to less than 20 would be amazing. You know what I mean? Like, okay, now how do we do that? Who do we have to really make that happen? And that's where, our defense was so good in 09 and 10 that, we get after players like Tom Brady, like Ben Roethlisberger, not every time they got the better of us, but there were some times now where we could catch them on a couple quarters, and now offense, you got to turn it on. Special teams, flip the field, give us a chance. And so I think if you get too concerned about the outside, you got to be aware of it, right? You can't be completely ignorant to it. But if you get too concerned about it, like, how can we beat these guys? How can we beat these guys? They're so good. They're superstars. Well, that's what they thought about some of the guys on our team. So, we pick up some big-time free agents in LaDainian Tomlinson, Jason Taylor. I mean, you bring in a couple, boom, they add to the roster. Jason Taylor picks up a couple sacks, like, oh, man, here we go. Now we got a shot, baby. And so, you pick up an extra possession along the way, steal a field goal along the way. And that's how you piece it together at the beginning. And then hopefully you end up where Kansas City is. And you're just amazed that they've held it together so long. They have a core group of guys, once again, who believe in the ethos of that team and the philosophy of that team. And they have something to fall back on. Good, bad, wins, losses. We have something that we subscribe to, believe in, and can always fall back on. And that's, going to evolve a little bit over time, but those hardcore values and beliefs, that should be a constant.
Kansas City's an anomaly this year, though, because they're not scoring. They're not scoring 30 every week. These other teams,
and it's find a way to win. It's winning formula.
So, but for the Jets,
well, look at the Patriots. Look at the Patriots. Early Tom Brady career, right. Late Tom Brady career. 1 year he throws whatever it was, 50 touchdowns. And, Randy Moss is lighting up the scoreboard. Well, he didn't do that the first year he started. The first 2 years he started. It was Falk out of the backfield. It was, tight ends making catches. It was defensive, Mike Vrabel running the show on defense with Brewski. And, they had ballers now on defense. And that was a defensive team. And Brady played a different brand of football than he did at the end of his career, year 20, when he's seen everything under the sun. So understanding what you're trying to construct, who you're trying to beat, what division you need to win. Okay, what does that look like? And then also understanding your personnel. What are we good at? What can we do? What are we trying to do? And what do these players respond to? So I think that's part of the battle. But that whole algorithm is, if I had the exact answer, buddy, I don't know if we'd be talking on this. I don't know if you could afford me.
Mark, multiple ways to skin a cat. That's what you're saying.
That's right.
Hey, listen, Kansas City, they found a way to win differently this year. Buffalo scoring more than 30 points a game every week. Baltimore scoring more than 30 every week. Detroit is scoring at astronomical numbers. You saw what your buddy KOC was able to do there in Minnesota. But they're pairing it up with that blitzing defense with Flores, who's going to get head coaching looks himself. And Philadelphia as well, another prolific offense. So it's just interesting as far as the trends are concerned.
Some of those guys you're talking about, like those are second opportunity, maybe third opportunity quarterbacks. Yes. In the Baker Mayfield in the playoffs. Look at Sam Darnold, went right through New York. He was there, not the right atmosphere, didn't play as well as he wanted to. Goes through the whole, quarterback rehab process, whatever you want to call it. and he becomes this reclamation project, lands in a place with an excellent defense, weapons on offense, a solid O-line, and the guy looks like, a Pro Bowler. And it's like, whoa, what's the difference between this guy and that guy? Was it just the environment? Is it his development over time? Is it both? It's a lot of those things. And the same thing for coaches. Just, the name I was shocked, the name I was really shocked that didn't get any run in this cycle was Jason Garrett. I mean, talk about a guy who's dealt with a circus in Dallas. Are you kidding me? And that's just as tough, if not tougher, than New York. There, Chicago, the Giants, the Jets, the Cowboys. I mean, those are tough places to coach, to quarterback, to be the GM. Those are some of the toughest places in the world. So, this guy held him right here for a long time, ripped off 13 wins with a rookie quarterback in Dak Prescott in 2016. Like, I don't know. That might be somebody I'd want to talk to. Just saying. I'm not I got no dog in the fight here, but somebody who's handled a situation similar to the Jets, I don't know.
Well, look at you throwing out another name. Because the Jets are going to cast a wide.
Like they don't have a list long enough.
Yeah, seriously. That's something.
Their list is like a CVS receipt, bro.
Oh, it's going to continue to grow. Matt, we love catching up with you. Many blessings to you and the family. Anything you want to say to your fan base back here in New York?
Oh, geez. Listen, it's always like your first love, it's we've had some of the most incredible times, really difficult times, and that's what made it fun. And I appreciate them accepting, maybe not everybody right away. Gary V, he booed me on draft day. I'll never forget that. No, we've since squashed that beef.
Good
I love
thing
Gary
you don't
V.
hold grudges.
He's excellent. No, I don't hold grudges. I don't even think about it. But he, stuff like that. I mean, it's an incredible experience playing that place. That's one thing I'll say for whichever coach, GM, and quarterback is there. And I think Aaron experienced that. He's talked about it, that this is a special place. You can feel it. There's energy in that building, in that city, and with that fan base. And you can find a way to harness it. It is a special, special feeling. I am eternally grateful for the opportunity to play there. And that has only helped me the rest of my entire life, not just professional, but personal life. And so I love the Jets. And, I'm obviously, I can't be biased on TV, so I got to call it straight. But, and I hope it doesn't come across like I'm too biased. But, they're always your first love. They gave me my first opportunity in this league.
Okay, next time in New York, dinner on me or you?
On Chris Ovens.
All right, thanks, brother.